The Titanic set sail from Southampton, heading for New York City on the 10th of April 1912. She was the largest passenger steamship in the world, and this was her maiden voyage. It was also her last. 4 days into the crossing, just before midnight, she struck an iceberg. Less than 3 hours later, she sank. Over 1,500 people were killed and only 700 survived. Halifax in Nova Scotia was chosen as the base for the salvage operation, as it was the closest port with a railway connection, enabling relatives to come and identify the dead. This is why the tragedy has left such a mark here.
We know that the experience of finding and recovering Titanic bodies had a profound emotional impact among the cable ship crewmen who were doing the work. There's a number of letters and diaries that they talk about. Some of them were really excited at first. They thought they would find millionaires' bodies and get rewarded. They knew they were part of a big international story. But just the days and days of finding these awful frozen corpses and the grim hard work of pulling them up by the hundreds really took a toll on the men. And every ship had chaplains aboard to counsel the men, and it's clearly it moved, but it also created kind of many disturbing memories for them.
The Maritime Museum of the Atlantic's Titanic exhibition has a number of signature pieces. There's a beautiful carved oak archway that led to the first-class lounge. Director James Cameron used a faithful replica of this for the lover's death scene in the 1997 film. There's also a deck chair, and for many people, its emptiness evokes the loss of the 1,500 lives. And that isn't the only piece that can cause a pause for thought.
Perhaps one of the most moving artifacts in the exhibit is a pair of shoes from a little 2-year-old boy. And these are the shoes of the unknown child, the youngest body that was found. And the authorities kept all the clothing of this little boy, hoping a family would come forward to identify the victim. They were supposed to burn the clothing afterwards when it was clear that nobody knew who the child was, but the police sergeant in charge of the evidence didn't have the heart to burn these little pair of shoes. And he kept them in his desk for years and years until he gave them to his family, and they donated them to us. So it's this little pair of empty shoes that kind of remind you of kind of one young life lost among many when Titanic sank.
The grave of this young boy can be found at Halifax's Fairview Cemetery. 121 victims of the disaster are here, some of whom couldn't be identified, some whose families couldn't afford to ship them back to Europe.
There's a grave in Fairview Cemetery of one of the engine room workers aboard Titanic who toiled in the boiler rooms, and his name was J Dawson. And he died aboard Titanic, as many of the engine room workers did. It would have been all but anonymous, but when James Cameron made his movie, he had a prominent character named Jack Dawson. And for a number of years, there were legions of teenage movie fans who were convinced this was the grave of the heroic character in the movie. And it's sort of become a bit of a cult attraction in the Fairview Cemetery.
When you see these tombstones, many of which don't even have a name, you can be forgiven for thinking that it almost represents a battlefield graveyard, when in fact it's a poignant reminder of a tragedy that unfolded almost 100 years ago and still has a resonance today.